I'm Lexy Davis, a love embodiment coach who helps people create a love that feels like home, and I'm here to bring more romance and playfulness into the world. I'm also an international retreat host, vibe curator, and human connector. I serve people through my business, Alive to Enjoy, and this podcast where I invite guests from around the world to sprinkle their wisdom and expand your perspective so you can create the deepest love you possibly can reach in this lifetime. I also want you to live the most joyous life, whatever that looks like to you, and I hope that this slice of the internet brings you lots of smiles and helps you keep your heart open. Thank you for choosing Heart Snuggles to be in your ears each week, and I'm so glad you're here with me. Welcome everyone to Heart Snuggles. We're so happy you're here. I have a special guest with us today I'm so excited to introduce you to. So Natasha, go ahead and tell them about yourself.
Thanks for having me on, Lexy. Super excited to have today's conversation. So thank you everyone for listening as well. My name's Natasha and I'm from Australia. So over the past 5 years, I've been studying at Australia's #1 natural health college, specializing in functional medicine and dietetics. And now I'm specifically working with women in reproductive health. And that's been me. And I absolutely love supporting women with their own fertility journeys, coming off contraception, PCOS, endometriosis, and all the things in between.
Amazing. So much to talk about. I know so many people face these problems as women, and it's just, I feel like more recently, finally being so much science being put behind it. So I'm excited to chat with you. But first, I want to ask a question on the podcast, which is, what was the last random act of kindness someone did for you?
Oh, that someone did for me. I would say recently, and I'll give you a bit of context why it was so special and meaningful for me. In the past, and I'm sure some of the listeners and even yourself, Lexi, might be able to relate to this. I definitely see it with clients a lot of the time as well. Women have this complex in the past of not being able to receive. And that was definitely me, being hyper independent, not wanting to receive gifts or, feeling guilty for receiving things from their partner, friends, etc. And recently I was going through a bit of a hard time personally, and I had an event coming up over in Bali. And at the point I just had so many, things going on. I was like, I kept putting it off. I can't go. And my partner, out of the love of his heart, knew that I was going through a hard time, and he paid for me to go to Bali for this event that I needed to go to. So that was my recent act of kindness that meant a lot to me. So yeah.
So cute. I love that.
Yeah. Definitely a big lesson receiving. So this is your message. Anyone that's listening, if you struggle to receive, if someone's giving you a gift, allow yourself to receive it and be really, really grateful for it.
Yeah, it's so huge. I feel like a lot of us have struggled with that for so many reasons. Like, I feel like a lot of us don't receive because it wasn't safe. And when we did receive when we were younger, it meant something else, or we owed someone something, or, there's so many reasons. And so to reprogram that, I think, is so important because receiving is essential. So I love that. What a good partner you have. So I'm stoked to hear that.
Yeah, it was awesome.
I would love to get into this. Let's start with fertility, because I find that's just popping up a lot in my life right now, is a lot of women have infertility. And what do you find are, the main cause of it, and like ways people can actually shift that?
Yeah, infertility is so multifaceted, I feel, and there's definitely a massive emotional aspect of it. There's definitely the physiological aspect of it as well. And one big thing for me that I've been seeing, and especially in the last, 10, 15 years, is a lot of infertility coming about. And I'm like, okay, well, where is this coming from? What's been the biggest contributing factor to this? And one thing for me, while there's, no research out there for obvious reasons, is one big thing is contraception. And I feel like that's one of the biggest impactors and things that may be inhibiting people from it, may have, side effects from it, or, contribute to different things or different reproductive issues down the line. And I see a lot of women, either come to me after being on contraception for 20 years, and then they're trying for a baby and having not much success. Or, I've seen other clients just come off contraception and are only trying for 6 months and then go through IVF. And they haven't even got their cycle back yet. And just very mixed signaling in that way. So I definitely think contraception is a massive one. And if any of the listeners are on here, is give yourself time after coming off contraception to definitely get your cycle back first, regulate your cycle. So it's a regular cycle every single month. You're bleeding at a normal rate. You're not having any symptoms or side effects from like excessive PMS or anything like that. Making sure you regulate that first before you even say, I've started trying for a baby. Because I see time and time again, women with irregular cycles or difficulties in just having a normal cycle and trying to say, oh, I've been trying. Well, it makes it really challenging when your period isn't even at an optimal state yet. Yeah. Then it's really hard. It's like trying to run uphill. It's making life harder than it should be. So I definitely say work on your reproductive health first and making sure that you've been off contraception for, at least a year or so, to give your body that time to increase your nutrient stores, to make sure that your cycle's regular, your moods are regular, and all these things. You've got all your ducks in a line before you commit to saying, oh, okay, I've started trying. Yeah. Because otherwise it can be really, really disheartening when you've only just come off contraception and you're trying to get your cycle back, but you're also trying to get pregnant at the same time. It's like a double stressor. And it doesn't help anything for a woman to be stressed during this period. So I would definitely say come off contraception as soon as you can before starting your fertility journey.
That's huge. I never even thought of that. I haven't tried getting pregnant yet, so I haven't had to think about that. And I also got off contraception, I don't even know, maybe 8 years ago. But It took me out, and like you said, an entire year for my cycle to regulate. And I can't imagine putting that stress of like your body trying to get back to normal and trying to have a baby. Like, no wonder it's not working. So that's a really great, piece of advice.
Yeah, definitely. And, even just the basic fundamentals without other possible complications after coming off contraception is you're going to be severely nutrient deficient in the first place. And if we don't have enough nutrients in the body, then it's not safe for our body to reproduce. Or maybe, you might be able to become pregnant, but then maybe the pregnancy terminates early or you can't withhold the pregnancy and things like this start to happen. So just making sure that you have enough nutrients in your body and you're well nourished is really important. So after coming off contraception or while you're on contraception, it depletes a lot of your key nutrients that you need: magnesium, B vitamins, zinc, selenium, iodine, all these key nutrients, impacting your thyroid function, so on and so forth, which can all impact your fertility. So it's really important to focus on yourself first and your health first before considering conception. I always recommend all my fertility clients and all women that even if you're not trying for a baby right now, potentially you might want to have children in the future. So always make sure you consider your preconception phase. And I always recommend at minimum 3 months preconception to have like a preconception body is at optimal state to hold and withstand a pregnancy. And so you can enjoy the pregnancy journey as well, because sometimes that can come with its own challenges. So minimum 3 months preconception. If you can do a little bit longer, I ideally recommend 6 months, but 3 months at minimum, because most people get really excited and they end up pregnant in that 3 months anyway. So I always say 6 months just in case.
Yeah, that's super smart. And what would that look like? Like, what's a preconception?
Yeah. So preconception phase would be exactly sort of what we're talking about. Were you on contraception previously? Have you got a regular cycle? Is your period 28 days, give or take a few days either side? Are you bleeding between 4 and 7 days? Do you have severe PMS? How's your libido? All these different types of things that are going on. How's your thyroid function? Checking all your bodily systems to making sure that they're working optimally, and also making sure that there's no sort of gut infection, candida overgrowth, or parasites, things like this. Because if you've got any sort of gut infection, you've got bloating, dysfunction, or you've got reflux and stuff like that. For example, if you've already got reflux prior to pregnancy, then becoming pregnant might be really, really uncomfortable for you. So making sure that if you've got any sort of gut infection or overgrowth in the gut, making sure we can treat that first before, conception, because otherwise it can be really uncomfortable and you can't be on specific antimicrobial herbs and stuff like that to treat these gut issues while you're pregnant. So it's definitely, I always recommend clients getting things like that checked first if you have issues with your gut before trying to conceive, because otherwise then you've got to deal with these issues all through pregnancy, and then probably after if you're still breastfeeding as well. So you won't be able to really treat at the root cause these gut issues until you stop breastfeeding. And that could be, 2 or 3 years in that period. So making sure that you're addressing any gut issues. Otherwise, we'll just be, doing a bit of gut healing rather than actually treating the infection, so on and so forth. So those types of things, making sure that there's no nutrient deficiencies, and making sure you can withhold a pregnancy. So making sure, stress levels are managed and stuff like that as well. Exercise, you're eating well, making sure those basic fundamentals of your health, making sure you're getting enough sleep, getting enough sunlight, your emotional regulation as well is really important, Lex. I'm sure you'd speak a lot about that with your clients on the podcast as well, I've heard. Making sure you're regulating your emotions as well, because coming through preconception and trying to conceive, it can be a whirlwind of emotions, and a lot of different traumas may or may not come up for you. So, for example, in my own fertility journey, not that I have been outwardly trying to conceive or anything, but when I was younger, I was told I wouldn't be able to withhold a child. And during that period and becoming a stepmother, it brought up all my different traumas that came through. So it's very interesting for a woman and for a man as well during these periods to make sure that you do have the emotional capacity to hold anything that's going to be coming up for you as well. So making sure that, number one, you're in good physical health, because that's going to help your emotional regulation as well if some traumas might come up through the process, which is more than likely for most of us during the process as well.
Yeah, oh, that was all super helpful. And as many of you know, I'm very into holistic health, and it's like we have to treat the whole body. And it's actually kind of crazy when you think about like how many people don't even think about their own health before having a baby. Like, are you actually taking care of yourself? Are you actually sleeping? Like, are you doing the basic things so that your baby actually has a beautiful environment to grow in and to be successful and to make it through the whole pregnancy? And I also am curious as to, I think this isn't really talked about either, is like the man's health.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like,
yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
100%. And I see that a lot with conception as well, is a lot of women, it's a lot of the challenges or the problems or the issues trying to conceive is always put on the women majority of the time. And who's the one going to the doctor's appointments? Who's the one seeking out the help and support and, really holding that weight on their shoulders all the time? And typically it's the woman. However, it takes two to tango. Yeah. And it's never just one person's issue. It's two people. So whatever one person in the relationship's going through, likely the other one is either they're supporting you or holding the stress of it and these types of things as well. And, things that we don't consider, even when we're speaking about gut issues, for example, is if one person in the family has a specific gut issue, maybe it's parasites, some sort of overgrowth, and you're sexually involved with someone, your partner, you're sharing drinks, you're obviously intimate, all these different things, you're, touching each other and things like this, is you're likely going to be translocating different bacteria, parasites to and from one another. So your microbial makeup may be very, very similar. So making sure that just because one person's experiencing one thing, likely the other person may be very similar, especially if you're eating very similar diets as well. It's another thing to take into consideration. You're in the same environment, same living environment, maybe you've got pets and animals and so on and so forth. So you always have to look at both sides of the coin when it comes to fertility. And I always suggest with clients is never just go alone to appointments, especially if you're working in holistic health, is always looking at both partners. So if I'm working with a client for fertility, I have a session with both the partners, with the woman and with the man, to make sure that both parties are on the same playing field and making sure that they're both ready for conception as well.
Yeah, that's so good and so important. And I mean, obviously everyone's a mirror of ourselves. So especially your partner, it's like you probably, even if they don't have symptoms, you're right, they probably do have something like that in them. And how would you say is the best way to approach it? Like, let's say your partner isn't eating the healthiest and you want to conceive this baby. Like, how can you invite them in a way where they wouldn't get defensive to make a change?
Yeah, great question. And it really depends why you want to have a child together, and making sure that both parties are emotionally invested into this next step into your lives together. Are you both wanting this? Is the time frame right? So on and so forth. And making sure that your partner is very supportive, because it is a massive journey. It's a massive responsibility, and it takes a tribe. It takes a tribe to raise a child. So making sure that you both are on the same page of why you want to do this in the first place. And if that why is strong enough, just like anything in life, like you'll be able to make the change. And it might be, making sure you're eating similar things, or, might be buying a meal prep company or something like that, if time permits, or things like this, to make things easier for yourself, to reduce that stress if there is trying to conceive stress, because sometimes there is. So how can we reduce any more stress on the relationship? Can we delegate some jobs or chores to other people? So sometimes with clients, their partners especially, this is usually a lot with the men, is sometimes that they might buy their food. Now, talking in the context of nutrition, they might go and buy, a healthy meal prep company for their lunches instead of buying and eating out. That's one of the big ones I see for a lot of male clients, just for ease. And just to help reduce that stress, or another job or another thing to add to the list when there's already that emotional stress going on. So how can we reduce that? It might be buying meal prep, or it might be, cooking things and putting it in the freezer, or eating the same things and stuff like this to reduce that additional stress.
That is huge. And I think, once again, it's just those things we're not really thinking of, but it makes such a big difference. And I personally know that stress is the cause, like underlying cause of almost every disruption in the body. And so when we can limit that stress, the body can actually function in the ways it needs. And so I would love to talk a little bit more on what are some of the other like stress or emotions that might be causing infertility.
So I definitely, number one, will definitely speak into stress first, because it's a massive one. And when I speak into stress, I say this to clients all the time as a holistic professional, is when we say stress, it could be emotional stress. So stress from work, stress from relationships, your personal life, so on and so forth, finances, whatever it may be. But stress in the body looks the same. So it doesn't matter if it's emotional stress, if it's physical stress. So physical stress might be from overtraining at the gym. It might be from an injury. It could be from being sick. It could be from an infection. It could be from a gut issue. It could be from your liver underfunctioning, could be from nutrient deficiency, so on and so forth. So the body doesn't discriminate between different types of stress. However, I do see a massive tendency with emotional stress, usually being at a higher priority for a lot of people. And usually that takes over the body a lot quicker than physical stresses. I see a lot of people being able to deal with physical stresses, like being physically sick or ill or injured, a lot better than most of us can manage our emotional stress sometimes. Yeah. So that might be a little hint to a lot of people. Maybe we need to regulate our emotional stress a little bit better and give that a little bit more time of day. But really regulating our stress, because I'll speak from a women's standpoint, is our hormones, firstly, they begin in the brain. So if we're having any sort of stress, emotional dysregulations, that's where our hormones start, in the brain. And then they go down to the ovaries. Okay. And that's when we're producing additional hormones. But we've also got secondary production coming from our adrenal glands. And our adrenal glands are our stress glands, essentially. They're the little glands that sit on top of the kidneys, yeah? And they don't get enough attention. So for women, we absolutely need to regulate our emotions and our stress, because otherwise our hormonal cascade going from the brain to the adrenal glands to the ovaries just does not work. And I see it time and time again as women really needing to nourish those adrenal glands, really needing to take more time out for themselves and to honor the different fluxes and flows during the cycle as well. So it's something that I've become more and more passionate about, is especially women after coming off contraception and being so disconnected from our cycles, is being able to notice and recognize when maybe our body just needs to slow down a little bit, and notice and recognize when, okay, maybe I can push a little bit harder now. And notice and recognize when it's time to just reflect and adjust and be okay with that. Because if we are pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing every single day of the month, we're going to push so hard that 1 month, 2 months, 3 months down the track, maybe our cycle might be a little bit irregular. Maybe we might get sick more often. Maybe we don't recover as quickly as we usually do. Or maybe I'm a little bit more angry and pissed off at the world, and all these different types of things that cascade. So massive thing for me is definitely regulating yourself during the month, during your cycle, for what you need during that period. And by all means, this doesn't mean that you have to slow down every single month or you have to slow down 50% or anything like that. Maybe one day it might mean that. However, some days we're not going to have the capacity to do so, but it might mean, okay, tonight instead of going to the gym or, or going running 10Ks or whatever things you usually do, it might be, okay, I'm actually just going to stay in and have a bath tonight. And that might be all you need. Or it might be, oh, actually, I'm just going to go for a walk today instead of a run, or just swapping things like this. So honoring that to help reduce that stress response is really, really important. So regulating yourself through the month and asking your body, what do I need right now, is really important. And also making sure we're not dysregulating our hormones through the month as well by putting too much stimulus on ourselves. So making sure we're not overdoing caffeine and overstimulating ourselves, or making sure that we're not, drinking a lot of pre-workout, all these different types of things, or, not eating breakfast. These are the biggest things I see all the time, is that those things that are going to overstimulate a woman and dysregulate those hormones and cause more stress on her body. So definitely always eating a good high protein breakfast is really important. Making sure there's no caffeine on an empty stomach. I see this all the time, makes me cringe. And that would be my main two to help start your day as best you can, and making sure that you're not stimulating yourself too much.
That's so important. And I've never actually drank coffee in my life. I've tried it, but never been a coffee drinker. And it's so normalized, like this addiction that a lot of people have to coffee, and it causes so much disruption. And as well as the fasting, like I as well fasted for so long until I realized it's not actually healthy for most women's bodies to fast. So yeah, there's so many, like, I personally believe that anyone can get pregnant, even if they're told they're not going to be fertile. And there's so many ways we can look at this and actually find a solution through, like you just listed a bunch of ways. And I think that's so beautiful to give people hope and to show them that, like, wait, maybe I can reclaim my power and figure this out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you want to be a part of an extraordinary trip of a lifetime where you'll be surrounded by open-minded, fun, and inspiring humans from around the world? You'll be in a space that is so safe you can express all of you, not have to hide or hold back the tears or the weird accents you love to do. The amount of unconditional love you will feel will make you feel unstoppable. You'll be in a tropical paradise surrounded by beauty in the Balinese jungle. Every day you'll eat delicious, healthy meals cooked by a local chef, and instead of cleaning up after, you'll head to the glass sauna and relax. You love growing and are ready to leap into the unknown and connect deeper to your spirituality. At the end of the week, you'll leave feeling like the weight of the world has been lifted off your shoulders. You'll be smiling ear to ear and feel as light as a feather. I will take care of all of your needs for a week at the all-inclusive Alive to Enjoy retreat this December 2nd through 10th. You can book a call with me, Lexy, at alivetoenjoy.com/retreats. And I swear this will be hands down the best way to end 2023. All genders are welcome, and all people who are here to make this world a better and brighter place.
Exactly like you said, there's a massive piece that comes into belief, because whether we're talking about holistic therapy, whether we're talking about the pharmaceutical industry, whatever therapy that we're talking into, it's all about belief, and things are 50% placebo. Yeah. So does it matter if it works or if it's placebo? Absolutely not. It matters if it works. And if it works, that's brilliant. Yeah. And because some things are going to work for some people and some things maybe not. Like the basic structures of being an amazing human and at optimal health are all going to be the same. But one big thing, it does come down to belief, because if there's no belief in the treatment will work, or if there's no belief in, oh, I'm going to get pregnant, if there's that unconscious belief that I'm still fearful that I can't get pregnant, or there's that unconscious resonance of, I don't believe this is true, this doesn't ring true for me, then it won't come true. And I've seen that happen. And that's when I usually support clients to go and seek support in regards to regulating their emotions, to work on that inner trauma a little bit more, whether it's through, some sort of womb space healing, or working with a coach or a mentor to really move through those blocks and those beliefs, because otherwise it's really going to limit any sort of physical treatment that we're going to implement. It can be the biggest thing that improves treatment, or it can be the biggest hindrance as well.
Yes, I think that's super important. Your mind definitely has a huge part in it. And it makes me really sad how many people are told they will never have a baby. And I'm like, please don't listen to that. Like, even, I mean, I'm not going to go down a whole stream, but like, yeah, when you go to a doctor and they say you only have a few months to live, or you'll never be able to do this, this, or this. And it's like that immediately puts you in fear. And fear is our lowest vibrational energy state. And it is hard to have anything possible when you're in that. So yeah, and I also like that you touched on the womb healing, because a lot of women carry so much in their womb, and we're so disconnected from our wombs. We have so much shame, which shame is another one of the lowest emotions we have. And that is not going to be supportive, definitely, of a healthy pregnancy. I mean, of course, anything is possible, but if you're trying to optimize yourself, I definitely think it's so important to look at your womb and any shame you have around your womanhood.
Yes, 100%. And it was one of the main reasons, and it was a big core issue for me in the past, that I worked through a lot of the shame that I stored in that womb space as well. And I created a woman's circle from it, because I was like, God, so many more women need to be around other women and support each other and just hear each other. And we all go through very similar things. And it was just so potent to be able to be in a space where you could support other women, you could be heard by other women, and just experience their energies as well is really, really important. And even going through my own womb healing journey and really recognizing those unconscious patterns of shame and guilt that I was carrying really allowed me to step my best foot forward in regards to knowing that I actually can get pregnant in the future if I want to. Because in the past, like other women that may be listening to the podcast as well, I was told at the age of 16 that I'd likely never have children. Like, that's just fucked up. Like, and it amazes me, and it also makes me so furious how a doctor or a specialist can actually just say these things to clients, that you have this, or you were diagnosed with this, or you will never, or you won't be able to have children, or you have this disease, or you have this long to live. And I think it's malpractice, to be honest. I think it's malpractice. And I think there should be more emphasis on allowing that person to create their own outcome to whatever it may be. It's absolutely okay to allude to certain things to clients, whether, it may or may not be challenging for you. You get to decide. Yeah. Or yes, you have cancer and you may or may not overcome it. You can decide that. Because I have a story I'd love to share. As one of my clients, he was on dialysis, kidney dialysis, for 2 years, and he was on the wait list to get a kidney and a pancreas transplant. And during that process, you're teamed up with other people that are going through the same journey, which is really beautiful. It's an awesome program in Australia. I'm not sure if they do it overseas or not, but it's amazing. And it's really beautiful for them to be able to have someone else to support them through that journey. The same in motherhood or pregnancy. It's really nice to have other people along that journey. There's plenty of Facebook groups and stuff like that to connect with if you're feeling lonely as well. So definitely connect with that, with whatever journey that you're going through is really important. And there was 3 guys in this journey together. And depending on your kidney, so obviously you're getting a transplant from someone else. That's not yours. It's a foreign body, and it's not your genetic makeup. However, what the doctors do is they try and get the most accurate or the closest genetic makeup to yours as best they can. Yeah. And there's still likelihood or risk of your body rejecting it because it's not yours. So you will have either option 1 to option 5 of which is the best genetic makeup that is most compatible to you. So number 1 is the best, yeah, the closest genetic makeup, and 5 is the furthest away from your genetic makeup. And anyway, at the doctor's office, they all got the option, do you want to know which option you got? And the two others that were involved in his group, they both chose to find out. And my client chose not to. And he was like, you know what? He was a very optimistic person. And he was like, you know what? I don't need to know. What does it matter? I'm getting a transplant. And, I'm not sure about overseas, but, even in Australia, it's a really challenging thing to be on a wait list for a transplant. and only certain people get them and so on and so forth. So it's a really challenging thing. And he was just very grateful to be able to get a transplant, full stop. And he was like, I don't need to know. I know I've got the best one. And I said, that's exactly what you need to know. And along his journey, he never had one issue with his transplant, a few little hiccups along the road, but nothing major when it comes to a kidney transplant and a pancreas transplant, which is absolutely wild. Yeah. You've got someone's foreign organ in your body and yours have completely failed and they're still in there, right? And the other two that found out which option that they got, both of theirs started to reject out of their body because they knew which option that they got. And I strongly believe, whether it's from that or not, it's up to you to decide, but I strongly believe in exactly what we're talking into about the placebo and the belief of things, is that because they chose to find out which option that they got, that really played a big role into how their body accepted or rejected that foreign object in their body.
Wow, that's such a beautiful story. And it's so good to hear these things. Like, I've heard so many stories at this point because I'm so immersed in this world, but for people that it's like, this shit is so real. And the more you let yourself just be open to it and accept that, like, your mind is a part of your body, whether you are aware of it or not, like, you can physically see that it is in your body. And so, yeah, your beliefs have such a big impact. And I love that you promote that in your work. And I think it's really essential. And I do think it's malpractice to tell someone that. And so I hope that more people can start to practice that and to have a look at their beliefs. And if you would love to share maybe your own personal or anything from the women's circle of some of the shameful things that a lot of women you've seen have been through or have about their own wombs or anything around their womanhood.
Very interesting. I think one big thing and one big theme that does come up in the women's circles is shame around speaking up and shame around not being able to articulate things to their partner. So specifically, whether it's around children, whether it's around sexual things, whether it's around things that are taboo, is there is a lot of shame for women around speaking up. So one big thing in the circle is we usually utilize a microphone. So every woman has the opportunity to speak up about those things that maybe she rejects or the things that she pushes away, and give her that voice to speak up in front of the women so she can utilize that practice of confidence and actually speak up about the things that she is shameful about or that she's repressed.
That's so huge. And I think there's many reasons for why women, and one main one is like, you do speak up and you aren't heard or respected or listened to. And so it's like, okay, there's no point of me speaking. And I think that so many women in particular, me especially, still do at times struggle to say things like when I'm having sex or even in front of other people. It's just like it's easier to stay quiet. And for me as a child, like the more quiet I was, the more attention and love I got. So it's like, how can I, learn to use my voice and say these things, especially in a partnership when you're trying to conceive a baby or you're working through anything. You got to be able to voice your needs to them. And I think that's really powerful, that to be in communities and to be in circles. And like, I just hosted a retreat, and the way that people just soften when they hear how not alone they are and how many people feel the same things. And to be in a space where people are vulnerable and open is so impactful and powerful. And so I think that is important if you are on a fertility journey or going through any health problems at all, to be in community so that you can be supported, because those things it's really hard to move through.
100%. And you touched on it as well, Lexy, is that validation. Sometimes we feel some wild and crazy things, and most of them are just thoughts. Most of the time we just need to take them in and let them go. We think some crazy things sometimes, especially during parenthood, especially during fertility journeys, and just being a human, we think some wild things. And not all of them are true. If we believed all of our thoughts every single part of the day, we would go crazy. However, sometimes hearing other people say, I felt the same thing, or I've done that in the past, or I've said that, doesn't mean that, it's valid or that, it's true or anything, or you're going to act on it or anything like that. However, it's just like, oh, okay, that's cool. I'm not completely crazy. Or, I feel like, okay, I feel heard now, is usually what a lot of women say. I feel heard now because she said that she's also experienced that, felt that, gone through that previously. It's like, okay, I'm okay then.
Mm-hmm. So big, so big. It's such an important need. It helps that need to belong, which is like our core need. So, so beautiful. And I just want to pivot a little bit and talk a little bit about PCOS. That's another huge problem for women. And yeah, so if you would like to go on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So PCOS is definitely one of the most misdiagnosed reproductive conditions, I feel, for women. I was definitely misdiagnosed with it when I was younger as well. And it's one of the things that typically you will go to the doctors, I've got irregular periods or whatever you go to the doctors with signs and symptoms of. And typically the first thing that they'll do is an ultrasound. And you can have cystic ovaries, so cysts on your ovaries, without having PCOS. So when you're going to the GP and you're just getting an ultrasound alone can't diagnose PCOS. So if you've gone to the doctors and you've only had an ultrasound and you've been diagnosed with PCOS, I would strongly suggest going back and getting some blood work done and assessing your hormonal panel as well to see if you do have high androgens, because you can have those cysts on your ovaries without having PCOS. So typically, when we do have a high amount of cysts on the ovaries, I typically find this a lot from women after contraception. So when you're not ovulating, or maybe you're having anovulatory cycles. Every time I try and say that word, I mess it up every time. You might be having anovulatory cycles. So that means you're just not ovulating. So either coming off contraception and you haven't been ovulating while you're on contraception, or you've been off contraception for a while and you're just still not ovulating as well. I typically see a lot of cysts on the ovaries for that. That can definitely happen. I feel like that's one of the main factors in personal experience. So if you are thinking that you have PCOS, maybe you're experiencing irregular periods, weight gain, maybe hair on the face or hair growing in male hair areas, typically these sorts of symptoms, I would definitely get blood work done to test your androgens, so your male hormones, definitely getting the ultrasound as well, and seeing if you do have the typical signs and symptoms of PCOS as well, and making sure that all other reasons for having high male hormones are ruled out as well. So this is one of the key factors that is usually passed on as well. Usually it doesn't happen.
And what are some of the other reasons that they might have high testosterone or androgens?
Yeah, definitely. Good question. Good question. So typically another reason, so you could have high androgens, but not specifically have PCOS. Typically high androgens can be from having high stress levels. So back to our stress. So what can happen is in the adrenal glands is our cholesterol and our cortisone can be converted to testosterone rather than converted down to estrogen. So it just bypasses that pathways and goes to testosterone, essentially. And then you can have the build up through that. And it's typically from high stress load. Typically see this with a lot with women that are very go, very type A personalities, usually really good business women or, really good mothers, stuff like this, always just very scheduled, very on the go all the time, typically very in their masculine, you might say. But that can definitely happen, is that conversion to testosterone rather than to estrogen. So bear in mind, all women do need testosterone. I have been seeing a lot of women recently with lower testosterone. So we still need some level of testosterone as women. However, we just don't need the high amount that we usually see in PCOS. You can also see it from inflammation. You can see it from insulin resistance as well. So if you're someone that's got blood sugar irregularities, you can also see it from these types of things as well, but typically from high stress.
It's such a common thing that I've been hearing about now is PCOS from everyone. I'm like, how does everyone have this? This doesn't make sense to me. Like, and when I started hearing how many of my friends, like I was just like talking to them and I was like, wait, this is popping up way too much. There's no way, or maybe there is, but like, why is that? Because that shouldn't be. And I personally believe and know from Chinese medicine that like, we don't need to have PMS. I've never actually had PMS symptoms. I mean, I've had some, but nothing really extreme. Yeah. Just because it's common doesn't mean it's actually normal for our bodies to have PMS. But I'm backtracking. But I think it's really interesting how it's like the masculine energy and it's the masculine, quote unquote, masculine hormones that are related. And it's like, oh, wow, how similar everything is. And so before I go off track, I would love to know, like, what are some ways that women can help rebalance themselves to help with PCOS?
Yeah, great question. It really depends on what type of PCOS that you have. So the typical one that I do see a lot of the time is your insulin resistance PCOS. You've got adrenal PCOS, inflammatory PCOS. So it really depends on what's the root cause of the PCOS in the first place. So a lot of the times, you go to the doctors, you might get diagnosed with PCOS, and they usually slap you on some sort of pharmaceutical drug for usually metformin, something like this, that's for blood glucose regulation. However, you really always need to ask, well, why did this come about in the first place? So if it is like something like an adrenal PCOS from high stress, well, we can treat the PCOS, absolutely. But if we're not treating that underlying cause of it, say the stress, maybe you're in a really toxic relationship, maybe you hate your work, whatever it is, or maybe you're just working long hours, whatever it is, we're not treating that or improving your lifestyle that's caused this to come about, then we're going to treat it and it's going to come back. Or maybe we're only going to get 50% results or something like this. So it's always about asking, well, why did this diagnosis come about? Where did this come from? And asking why, and always treating that root cause rather than just trying to put a Band-Aid on it. However, if we're just talking sort of general approach, is main things that I usually look at for PCOS is definitely nutrition is really, really important. So always making sure you're eating enough protein in your diet. So like I said earlier, having that higher protein, higher fat breakfast is really important, not skipping breakfast, making sure you're eating sort of within an hour is really important. Regulating blood glucose is really important as well. So not eating sugars or carbohydrates on an empty stomach. So if you want to have your chocolate and stuff like that, have it after a proper meal rather than on an empty stomach, things like that. Good supplements for PCOS, depending if you likely do have the high androgens. So some of my favorite herbals is definitely good combination is peony and licorice together. They're really good at reducing testosterone together. They work really, really beautifully. And the licorice in there is also going to help support your adrenal glands and nourish that stress response as well. Inositol is another one that's really, really good. I typically use that a lot for PCOS as well. So that would be my main three that I would probably suggest. And then things like magnesium, making sure you've got enough vitamin D as well. So always getting blood tests to make sure that your nutrients are low before just supplementing as well is really important. So magnesium, vitamin D, zinc, also really important.
And I'd love if you could just quickly touch on, because we said it 2 times, why it's important for women to eat breakfast and not to fast.
Yeah, I did a post on this recently and everyone went crazy about it. Is what happens for a woman is we have typically a 28-day hormonal cycle, give or take. Yeah, it might be a few days late, a few days longer, a few days shorter, and that's okay. So we have a hormonal cycle that goes for a whole damn month. Yeah. In compared to men only have a hormonal cycle that's 24 hours. So men, sure, maybe they'll be able to fast and it won't impact their hormonal cycle very much. However, as women, every day is increasing towards ovulation, and then it's decreasing post ovulation. So our hormones, if you've ever seen the hormonal panel, we've got luteinizing hormone, follicular stimulating hormone, we've got estrogen, testosterone, progesterone, prolactin, sex hormone binding globulin, DHEA. We've got all these hormones in the month moving and flowing at different times. So we need to nourish our body and give our body enough energy and nutrients to support this, for one. But also what happens is after we eat dinner, usually our body's digesting, it's processing our nutrients and the calories that we've eaten. And overnight, our blood sugar is dropping. Our blood sugar is dropping really low. And that's okay. That's normal. Yeah. It's normally what happens after we eat, and our body's processing the sugars, it's putting the glucose inside the cells. What happens after that is usually in the morning, we're fasted and we need some glucose, we need some fuel for our bodies. And instead, what women I've seen in the past, and the tendency with the whole intermittent fasting thing, is they'll continue to fast until 11, 12 o'clock. And then your body's been fasting since 8 p.m. or 7 p.m. the night before till then, and your blood sugar is dropping quite low. And what happens when our blood sugar drops really low, and I just want to pre-frame, is you don't have to be a diabetic for your blood sugar to be dysregulated. I see it all the time. Yeah. You can still have dysregulated blood sugar and not be diabetic. So this means that your blood sugar's dropped so low over the night, and you're probably going to have low energy, fatigue. And if our blood sugar is low for a prolonged amount of time, it can actually cause a lot of inflammation in the body, and it actually causes more stress in the body. So that inflammation is the level of stress. So it's causing stress in the body. And then that's going to impact our hormones as well. So you might notice you might have lighter periods, maybe you don't have as much energy, and it's going to impact that hormonal cascade as well. So our blood sugar is one of the main things that I harp on for, I would say, just about every one of my female clients, to make sure that we balance our blood sugar, because that's going to dysregulate everything that's going on in our body and cause more unnecessary stress, rather than just fueling our body in the morning and giving it the nutrients that it needs, rather than causing more additional stress. Because we need nutrients, we need fuel. We don't need to fast if we don't need to. So it would be from blood sugar dysregulation is really, really important. And if you don't have an appetite in the morning, it's probably because you're super stressed. So if you're super stressed and you don't have an appetite in the morning, you definitely need to eat breakfast.
That's such a good point. And maybe you need to meditate or do something to bring those stress levels down a little bit. Yeah. Oh, that's so interesting. And just really quickly, what was your journey of becoming who you are today? Like, why did you choose this path?
Yeah, beautiful. Thanks for asking. Great question. Great question. So it was definitely a multitude of things. Definitely growing up, my mum was always on the more natural side of health and well-being, always the less is more approach. I guess that was a massive contributor growing up to why I sort of went down this path. And growing up, I went through all my own different challenges from, when I was 16, the GP telling me I'd never have children again, going through my own challenges with different contraceptive methods, coming off contraception, all those different things that I experienced, and not getting the right answers for myself. So I remember going to different specialists, and my mum was very concerned, thinking, why is she getting this pain in her uterus, pain on intercourse, so on and so forth. And I was going and getting all these tests done, and I was going and seeing all the specialists, and no one was giving me any answers. And I just couldn't make sense of it. I'm like, I'm going to the best gynecologist. I'm going to the GPs. Like, why can no one actually tell me what's going on, nor support me through this, or even educate me to make sense of what the hell's going on? And through that journey, and then just eventually deciding to come off contraception, at that point in my life, I had no idea that was one of the big issues. And once I came off contraception, that was one of the big turning points. So I was like, I need to help support other women through this. And it was through that journey of experiencing misdiagnosis, I would definitely say, experiencing misdiagnosis, experiencing the horrible time with the system, the Western medical system as well, and not getting the answers. Those were two of the biggest contributing factors to where I am now, and why I help and support women through the same things.
So amazing. Thank you so much for believing in yourself enough and like really wanting to find the answer, because it's so easy to give up on ourselves and to be just so frustrated. And yeah, so that's really amazing. And I'm so happy that you help so many people, and you're definitely really knowledgeable, and that's so good. So if someone wants to work with you, what do you do? What do you offer? And where can they find you?
Yeah, awesome. So I work with clients all online at the moment, potentially opening up in-person spaces on the Gold Coast. So if you're from the Gold Coast, very soon, so stay tuned. However, everything is online. So I do work with international clients as well. If you want to find me on Instagram, is Natasha Godfrey _. And if you're wanting to dive into more educational content, definitely go onto Facebook in my private Facebook group, which is called Women's Health Secrets. So definitely join in there if you're wanting to dive into more in-depth content and learn more about the female body.
So good. And I definitely recommend checking her out. She has so much good content and valuable content we can learn. Last question of the podcast is, what was a time or a story about when you felt like your heart was snuggled?
This is really interesting. I'll share the first thing that popped to mind, because that's always your best answer. So it's gonna be it. So the time that made my heart snuggle it was a story with my partner. So back to all of our dating and all the fun things that come when you first getting into a relationship and all the fun things. And I remember the beginning of our relationship was before we were officially in a relationship, was very, I guess you could say, on and off. I wasn't interested. He was very interested, and I didn't want a relationship. So I'm sure some of you can probably relate to that, or it's like the rejection of the relationship, even though unconsciously you know that's what you want. And I was going on a 2 week course, and the day before, my current partner asked me to be his girlfriend. And that was all exciting and all the things. And the moment that made my heart snuggle was my body just knew that I needed to be in the relationship, even though there was so many external challenges going on at that period of time. Like so many, everything was telling me, what the hell are you doing? Anyway, your body just knows when you know. And that day, that morning that I was going to this 2 week event. So I've just got in a new relationship and now I'm off at this 2 week event. And he had no idea what the hell I was doing. I had no idea what the hell I was doing. And I got there and a lady that I knew, Lulu, and she's a psychic medium. And anyway, we were standing in a line waiting to go in, and she had her tarot cards out. And I can remember the card as well. And she's like, would you like me to pull you a card, Tash? And I was already on a hike. I was so excited. This guy just asked me to be his girlfriend. And she pulled out this card and she's like, oh, this is the card I pulled out this morning for my Facebook Live that she does. She's like a live video every morning. And she pulled out this card and there's this man standing there with a lion in the background and is it a staff? A staff, like the big stick thing? Yeah, maybe a staff. I don't know. Someone can correct me. And she started to explain what it meant. And she's like, oh, you can read the extra long response on my page. And it was really funny because I started to read it and I started to laugh. And it was one of the quotes that his grandmother used to say to him. And it's interesting. I wear her necklace now, which is really funny. And it was strength to love, passion to ground, and something else. And that's all I remember. Strength to love, passion to ground. And I remember it and I was like, holy shit. And I texted my partner and I said, send me a photo of your tattoo. Send me a photo of your tattoo. And it said the exact freaking words on his tattoo, on his inner arm. And that's what his grandmother told him, her last words before she passed away. And I was just like full goosebumps, and Lulu was full goosebumps, and we were like crying. And so I was just like, holy shit, with the whole world against me, with if you looked at the situation at the time, you'd be like, this is a red flag. But in that moment, that was just like the biggest heart snuggle. And like his nan was definitely watching over both of us to give us that message, to say everything is good, you're moving in the right direction, you're guided. And that was honestly the biggest heart snuggle that I needed in that moment, to really reassure me that you've made the right decision and now you're being divinely guided towards what you need right now. That was really, really beautiful.
I love that. That made my heart snuggle. And I got the chills when you were saying it too. So it's so, dating is so complex and confusing, and especially when we're getting external output and like, it is a journey for sure. And I love when we can get those confirmations and those affirmations. And that's a really beautiful one, a huge one. Like, holy smokes, that's so good. Thank you for sharing that story. How long have you guys been together?
It'll be 2 years in October now. Yeah.
Oh, good. Yeah. Okay. Last thing is, if someone is going through any health problems and they're struggling right now, what's something you would let them know?
Something that I would let them know if they're going through their problems is, always, 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 always seek a second opinion. Seek a second opinion. So if you've been told one thing, or maybe something that you're doing isn't working, or you don't believe in the diagnosis, in your own body what is true and what is not true. And I see this all the time. I was even watching a video this morning of a woman speaking about her own health journey. And if you know in your body that something's not right, and you go to a specialist, you go to a GP, you go to a practitioner, whoever it may be, and they maybe disregard it or don't do further testing or aren't on the same level as you with severity of what's going on, please go and seek a second opinion, a third opinion, a fourth opinion, a goddamn fifth opinion if you need to make sure you get to that root cause of what's going on, because you know your body best. And go to someone that's going to listen to you and that will actually take you fucking seriously, because that's really important, because the practitioner-client relationship is so important, and someone that listens to you is so important and doesn't disregard what you're going through. So seek a second opinion, hopefully not a third, but if you need to, do what you need to do.
I second that big time. I've been through health problems myself. And when I used to go, I honestly don't see Western medicine anymore. But when I did, it was very frustrating. And just a quick instance, it's like you get 5 to 10 minutes with them. And then I went to a naturopath and I got a whole hour and a half appointment. And I was like, whoa, she really wants to get to know me and help me. And so yes, definitely agree to take a second opinion, especially when you feel it in your body. Like, no, I want an answer. Like, you deserve an answer and you deserve to find the root cause. I fully believe that. So wow, thank you so much, Natasha. This is amazing. And I hope everyone goes and finds you and you keep helping all the beautiful people out there.
Amazing. Thank you so much for having me on, Lexy.
You made it to the end of the episode, so now it's time for our snuggly heart breath of the day. Place a hand or both hands, if it's safe to do so, over your heart and take a big breath into your heart center. Open your mouth and let it go. I'm so grateful to have shared this time with you. If you enjoyed this convo, please share with your besties and your fam. And if you're a visual person like me, fly over to YouTube and watch the video. If you want to do a random act of kindness today, please leave a 5-star review so more people in the world can get their heart snuggled. You're helping tremendously when you do this, so thank you so much. And as a gift for doing so, I'll give you my Soften Your Heart Medi that feels like an exhale and a hug from within. When you leave a review and email me the screenshot to heartsnuggles@alivetoenjoy.com, you can also find the email in the show notes and you'll get the free meditation. Sending you the warmest, comfiest hug and lots of unexpected blessings your way. Remember that every single person just wants to be loved. So how can you be loved today?